What is going on, everybody? It's KB. Before the episode starts, make sure you go check out StreamerSZN's brand new theme music. That's right. We have full-time, brand new theme music thanks to the newest homie and newest member of the music side of Underground Sports Philadelphia homies. That is Mobley. Stay Volk. His new single is out now. It is linked in the description on YouTube, and you'll be hearing it on audio until we can figure out if we can play it on video on StreamerSZN episodes from here on out. That's our new theme music. Stay Volk. Go download it now wherever you get your music, and go check out the music video on YouTube. But now, let's get into the episode of StreamerSZN.
Philadelphia, baby, you're gonna love it. Best sports fans in the world. Actually, the worst, but that's what makes them the best.
Legend has it. What is going on, fellow streamers? Welcome into another edition of StreamerSZN, the exclusive TV and movie podcast for streaming platforms on the Underground Sports Philadelphia Podcast Network. It's your boy KB coming at you from Underground Studios. And obviously, if you're watching on YouTube already, you know Dylan's not to my right. Dylan is currently having a medical emergency in terms of he's on his Elvis demise right now. If you can pick up what I'm putting down, he's been in the bathroom all day and it has not been pretty. So we're going to the bullpen, pulling in the big time news reliever here. The legend has it himself. Christian the Wisnewski joins us here on StreamerSZN.
Yo, Kyle. It's finally nice to finally make an appearance on the podcast where it isn't just me giving you my list for top 10 streaming projects for the next year.
Very excited. It's not award season either. We're not predicting, the Oscars or Emmys or anything. And it's good to have you on where we're just talking about shows and kicking back and, picking each other's brains about these unbelievable programs that we're going to be talking about. Christian's going to be joining us for She-Hulk and Andor. We're doing episodes 1 and 2 of Andor for the people at home, because you already know we're on our She-Hulk grind. We're in the latter stages of this season of She-Hulk, and of course we're kicking it with Dem Dragons on House of the Dragon, which we'll also be talking about. But we're doing episodes 1 and 2 of Andor to just make it easier to digest this episode for the people. And then next week we'll be doing episodes 3 and 4, even though we know episode 3 came out this week, because Star Wars and Lucasfilm said, hey, we're going to gift you something that, we haven't done in quite some time. And we've got a 12 episode season of Andor. So that's going to take us through most of the rest of 2022, which is very exciting. But before we get started, make sure you're following us on the socials at StreamerSZN on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow me on Twitter at KBIZZL311. Follow Christian on Twitter at TheWiz_PHI. And of course, check out the website, undergroundsportsphiladelphia.com, for all of our written content. Subscribe to the podcast feed, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever the hell you get your podcasts. And as Dylan always says, in the podcast reviews on Apple, leave your TV and movie recommendations with those 5-star reviews, because we'll add them to our list once we're done this gauntlet stretch that is, She-Hulk, House of the Dragon, Andor back to back to back. We'll be adding things onto our list because, we'll get to those periods where there's not as much to talk about for our week-to-week shows, and you can do the same exact thing on the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel. Subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel, smash that like button, ring the bell icon so you don't miss a single second of the content that we're dropping on the YouTube channel. And plus, you already know we're on that hashtag Road to 1K Gauntlet Challenge, where when we hit 1,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel, Dylan's going to cosplay as a character from a show or a movie that we have watched as voted on by the people, and I will be sitting down and taking the everlasting, splurge into Game of Thrones. I'll be watching season 1 of Game of Thrones when we hit 1K. So if you want me to get caught up on everything going down in Westeros that I missed out for 10 years, subscribe to the YouTube channel and we'll make that thing happen. Shout out to our sponsors, Tomahawk Shades, the best small batch eyewear in the game. Go to tomahawkshades.com and use code USP to get 25% off your order. If you're watching shows and movies like the way that Dylan, myself, and Christian are, you should be rocking those blue light plus glasses. They've got the prescription lenses in stock now as well for the people that are like, hey, well, I have prescription lenses. Christian and Dylan are both glasses wearers. They got the prescription lenses ready to rock and roll for you now. So go to TomahawkShades.com. Use code USP for 25% off your order at TomahawkShades.com. Kenwood Beer. It's the official beer of Underground Sports Philadelphia. Go to KenwoodBeer.com and use that all new and improved Kenny tracker to see who's got Kenwood Beer on tap in the Philadelphia area. You got to be 21 or older to do so. And, of course, please drink responsibly. And the pals over at Bino Board. Go to BinoBoard.com. Every week leading up to the World Cup, they are dropping World Cup team-inspired boards. This week, as we're recording this on Friday for you guys, they dropped their Team Spain board. So go to BinoBoard.com. Add a board to your man cave, your she shed. When you're watching in between shows and movies, have something fun to kick back with, and that is Bino Board. And you can use our code BINOUSP at checkout. That's BINHOUSP for 10% off your order at BinoBoard.com. Christian, let's get into it. As Dylan calls her, let's talk about our favorite muscle mommy, She-Hulk, who wasn't really in her muscular form all too much in this episode. This episode titled Just Jen, as Jennifer Walters is invited to be a bridesmaid at her old friend Lulu's wedding. This is a big wedding episode, by the way. If you watched House of the Dragon, and of course if you watch She-Hulk, we've got a lot of weddings to talk about this week. But Jen gets invited to be a bridesmaid at her friend Lulu's wedding. When she arrives, however, she's disappointed to find out that Lulu wants her to present her only as her normal self. We don't need She-Hulk taking away the spotlight from Lulu on her big day. So you just need to be Jen today, okay? And that's something that Jennifer Walters throughout all 6 episodes of She-Hulk has just been asking the world to let her be. Let her just be Jen, up until Titania last week brought her to court over the name She-Hulk, and she's like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to embrace this name, and, it's mine. It's not hers. And then instead of She-Hulk, and she's saddled with numerous pre-wedding duties, and even worse, Titania is present as she is dating one of Lulu's groomsmen, which is one of the funniest, it felt like fourth wall adjacent when Titania walked into this wedding. It's like, why the fuck is this person from the outside of, Jen's personal life from back in the day coming into this stratosphere here to kind of just interrupt and disturb everything? It felt very fourth wall adjacent from what we've gotten from She-Hulk so far to me.
It does also just kind of feel like a very wedding thing where it's like you just see someone you're not expecting to see there. It's like, why are you here? Who are you here with?
I wasn't expecting to see you. So it was very funny to see Titania walk in and, kind of attempt to not play the bad guy in this space. But then, obviously, as this episode progresses, you find out what is actually going down, which we'll get to in just a little bit. And Jen bonds with Josh, a friend of the groomsmen, who is kind of on my sus list. But Titania, yeah, sound the alarm. But Titania attacks her, wanting her gone. And following a brief fight, Titania breaks down and storms off, gets her veneers smashed, just by slipping on ice, which was very terrible. I don't know about you, Christian, but if I see somebody's teeth are messed up, it gives me the creepy crawlies, the heebie-jeebies. It really freaks me out. So seeing that happen to Titania, I was like, oh no, honey.
See, I don't necessarily have a problem with seeing messed up teeth, and now maybe that's because I watch so much British stuff that it's like, teeth? Sure. Yeah, fine. Okay. Congrats.
And meanwhile, Book and Ramos, they work on a divorce case for a superhuman called Mr. Immortal. What a deep cut from the Marvel Comics, played by the legendary Dave Pasquale, which, if this actor looked familiar to you, if you kick it back to the Book of Boba Fett, he was the Major Domo, the Twi'lek, that was kind of, in and out of almost every single episode back there. He's a famous improv actor, and I was very excited to see him now in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as Mr. Immortal, who has repeatedly faked his death to get out of several marriages. Compounding the problem, 8 of his previous spouses all file suits against him upon learning his secret via an online video displaying his powers leaked by a website called Intelligentsia, which, bookmark that, ladies and gentlemen. That is something that I have been waiting for to, come to the forefront in this show known as She-Hulk, because If anything, D23 taught us the intelligentsia was going to pop up sooner rather than later with the return of the leader in Captain America New World Order. We are getting very, very conspiratorial in the MCU in the next couple of years. So stick around. We're going to break down everything you need to know about the intelligentsia. After resolving the case by helping the spouses work out compensation deals, which were very hilarious, you are going to get a deep-hearted apology and eye contact for 15 seconds. No, make it 20. That was the best. And also, calling having a child with Mr. Immortal a mistake. Like, it was a very funny, mapped-out scene. And Book and Ramos discover several death threats directed at She-Hulk on Intelligentsia's message board, while the organization plans another attempt to steal a blood sample from Walters, following the Wrecking Crew's failure to do so, I believe, back in episode 3. And as soon as I saw the Wrecking Crew, I had two thoughts. Either Kingpin is behind these guys, or it's going to be the Intelligentsia, and that's exactly who it is. The Intelligentsia in the Marvel Comics is a very interesting sect in terms of just like what they are able to do. Their kind of claim to fame is basically trying to control the Hulk in the comics, and that is their main mission. The leader, who we saw in the 2008 Incredible Hulk film with Ed Norton, he is making a return in Captain America New World Order as announced at D23, and he's a major part of the Intelligentsia.
But that doesn't mean we won't see him before then.
Correct. Which I believe we are going to get a look behind the curtain at the return of the leader at some point in She-Hulk Attorney at Law. When that will be, not 100% sure, because we still haven't even seen Charlie Cox Daredevil, who is supposed to be in the show and has not made an appearance yet outside of his new helmet.
Yeah, like, hold on, let's unpack that for a second. So we're 6 episodes in, and there's supposed to be, checks math,
it's 9 episodes total for the season.
Yeah, so I'm not going to get on my whole spiel here, but it does kind of feel like we're kind of just filling time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to keep this strip, but like that's kind of the biggest gripe I have with some of these Marvel shows, where it's like, yes, it's fun and all that, but does it need to be 9 episodes? Couldn't it just be 8 or 7 and we cut out some of this filler? Because if you can't develop the character in like 4 or 5 episodes, we have a bigger problem here in terms of just overall storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And the first 2-3 episodes overall did a pretty good job explaining the She-Hulk character, and now this most recent episode was like more, and maybe this is just me, my film brain, reading into it, like trying to more so like, and it's kind of been a theme of this whole series, like accepting oneself and all that. So we kind of hit that point a bunch, and like, yes, it's fine to have this episode, but we're dragging this out to 9, and we like, Titania's like clearly not the villain of the show, and if we're dragging a show out 9 episodes, it's like we're really dragging this villain stuff out, and like yes they dragged out the villain stuff in Hawkeye, but like there was at least a semblance of conflict, and you had like a like set time frame there, which kind of made more of like exposition-ish stuff fine. Here, like, it's just like indeterminate amount of time. We're doing all these cases, and like, yes, there's fun law procedural stuff, but I feel like it's just like we're just doing this stuff to do this stuff. Just like get characters in here that like, oh, we've never used Mr. Immortal. Let's use Mr. Immortal. Let's use this person. And it's like, but how's that serve to like truly progress things? And like that's always been my biggest gripe with some of this MCU stuff.
I think the one thing that I really enjoy about She-Hulk is that the fact that it is going to be 9 episodes. This is the first Marvel show that we've gotten since WandaVision, if you exclude What If. You know, the first live-action Marvel show that's been more than 6 episodes. And I felt, you know, with the likes of Miss Marvel, which I really enjoyed, but everybody knows if you've listened or watched this podcast, the villains in Miss Marvel were very subpar. You know, I felt like Moon Knight could have been one of those shows where you lengthened it even more than what it was. I feel like some of these shows that were kind of on that traditional, 6-episode slate, they had to try to pack so much into them because they weren't sure if they were going to get a season 2 or more to tell about their character. Where with 9 episodes, I'm like, all right, cool, this works. Where like, I think She-Hulk, one thing they've done really well too, knowing that it's 9 episodes and they've kind of shortened the runtime of the episodes, they've packed a lot of information and a lot of content into a 30-minute window, 25-minute window, if you want to, take away the credits and everything. But I think they've done a really good job with that, of just telling the story and getting a lot knocked out in a 25 to 30-minute time window. And I like that they're using... You know, a lot of people forget, like, She-Hulk was around before Deadpool, and she was the original, fourth wall breaker in the comics. Like, that's her kind of trope. Like, she is that funny, witty kind of character. And I like that they are using that kind of, character trait to get ahead of all of the quote-unquote criticism that She-Hulk was going to face from all of the trolls and losers online that, went and rating bashed everything before the show even came out. And I like that they've used that to kind of get ahead of the story. Like in this episode where they're like, oh, is this an untimely wedding episode? Yep. Like I thought that was very well done by the writers. And I think this episode, more so than any other episode really that we've gotten, outside of maybe episode 3 when we got the Wrecking Crew to come in and kind of give us a baseline of where the plot was going to move, I thought this episode did a really nice job of progressing the plot to where I think this show is going to end up by the end of episode 9. And, Mark Ruffalo's on the record talking about how the MCU going forward, it's not going to be able to exist without She-Hulk in it. So she's going to be a major player on the MCU chessboard moving forward. And I think the introduction of the Intelligentsia now gives a lot of people a clearer, looking glass of like, okay, this is where we're progressing to. This show is probably going to lead now into Captain America New World Order. It's going to lead into some of these, street level type of shows and movies that we're getting, down the pipeline. Obviously, I think we'd be fooling ourselves if She-Hulk doesn't make some sort of appearance in Daredevil Born Again in 2024. Like, that's just bound to happen. And I think the only thing that people are complaining about so far now that they've seen 6 episodes is, okay, initially Charlie Cox was listed for 9 episodes on IMDb for She-Hulk, and he hasn't shown up in the first 6. How many, more episodes can you go before introducing his character full-blown to the MCU in a way that has been described as it's a lighter take on what we know Charlie Cox's Daredevil to be?
Yeah, see, I don't have a problem with them doing the fourth wall break. Oh, this is an inconvenient middle of the season wedding. It's like, I don't need episodes like episode 4 though, which kind of feel like they serve absolutely no purpose in progressing this at all. And it kind of just feels like, well, we used Wong in episode 3s, and we can't just leave him off like that. So it's just, I'm fine with the episode, but She-Hulk kind of needs to start kicking into gear more.
Yeah, I think they, these next 3 episodes that are on the docket for next week, October 6th, and then October 13th for the season finale, are going to kick it into high gear now that we have, what everyone believes to be the main villain on the board here with the Intelligentsia? Will we see the leader come through? Because the Intelligentsia, too, for everybody at home who's not too familiar with who are the players in the Intelligentsia per se, I'll give you a little taste here. We've got the leader, obviously, who is confirmed to be returning. The Mad Thinker, Red Ghost, Egghead, who we have seen in the Ant-Man movies. You'll love this one, Christian. MODOK, who allegedly in the screeners at Comic-Con and D23, there is some form of MODOK showing up in Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, which is very exciting. And then also in the Intelligentsia at one point is one Doctor Doom, which we got one little teaser of back in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness when Reed Richards came through that portal that was specifically designed to be, Doctor Doom linked. And Doctor Doom is a big player on this podcast and who, we want to see come through in the MCU. And it makes a ton of sense that he is, coming into fruition now that we're getting into this Kang realm of things. I personally think one of these Intelligentsia members, and I think the guy who was typing on the message boards on the website and everything towards the end of the episode when they cut from Jen eating fries with her new boo and onto that screen, I think the message that popped up to me for who the actor is and him making another appearance in the show, I think it's Todd, who She-Hulk went on that date with and then was at the law firm as a client later on in episode 5. I think he is part of this Intelligentsia makeup, and he might be the brother of the leader.
Well, I can't seem to find my tinfoil hat, but...
Shout out to J. Jonah Jameson.
I think that perfectly caps everything for She-Hulk, right?
Yeah, this episode, I think, like I said, I think it did a good job of progressing the plot in terms of what we're going to see from, a hero versus villain standpoint for these final 3 episodes. Hopefully we see Charlie Cox next week. Hopefully we see, Leapfrog/Frogman next week, another character who is confirmed for this show that we haven't truly seen yet, but if you paid close attention in episode 5, you saw him leaving our MCU Edna Mode's costume design building that She-Hulk was in. He was kind of, confused in the elevator leaving that building. So hopefully we see those 2 next week, which will be very exciting. And now that the Intelligentsia is pretty much confirmed on the board with the website, and then obviously we see more needles and everything, I think it's going to just continue to pop off here with what is going to progress in episodes 7, 8, and 9 for She-Hulk. And as everybody knows, every episode we give our rating for an episode on a scale of 1 to 10. You can use decimals. You don't have to necessarily. I always do, but Christian, for episode 6, just Jen of She-Hulk, what would your episode rating be?
Like a 6 or a 7. Like good, not great. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it like a 7.4. The Intelligentsia coming through, I think, is big, and then I love seeing Dave Pasquazi come through in the MCU as Mr. Immortal, and then just overall, just one of those fun tropey wedding episodes of your favorite sitcoms that you know and love. But She-Hulk episode 6 in the books, and now we're on the tail end of the season, starting next week with the final 3 episodes on deck. But without any further ado, we are going to cut away. We're going to talk some House of the Dragon, and we'll be right back with Christian to talk about Andor episodes 1 and 2. All right, we are back for the mid-segment of this episode of StreamerSZN. It is time to hit the music. It is time for House of the Dragon, Episode 5. We Light the Way is the title of this episode. The final episode, we are going to see the young actresses for Alicent Hightower and Rhaenyra Targaryen. This episode brought it in so many different ways. You couldn't keep your eyes off of stuff. We talked about a wedding in She-Hulk. We've got a wedding in House of the Dragon as well. And even though I've never seen Game of Thrones, I know when it's wedding day, things are going to get spicy. So let's dive into We Light the Way for House of the Dragon, Episode 5. Like I said, this episode marks the final appearances of the two cast members, Millie Alcock as young Rhaenyra Targaryen and Emily Carey as young Alicent Hightower, due to a 10-year time jump that will be happening this Sunday between this and the succeeding episode, in which Rhaenyra and Alicent will be portrayed as adults by Emily Darcy and Olivia Cooke, respectively. It also marks the only appearance of Savannah Stain as teenage Lyanna Valerian, and who was portrayed by a younger child by Nova Foelis Mose in the first and second episodes. This episode received generally positive reviews, with critics praising Carey's performance and the conversation between Laenor and Rhaenyra at Driftmark. So, in the Vale of Arryn, Daemon Targaryen murders his estranged wife, Lady Rhea Royce, Rachel Redford, the actress, framing her death as a hunting accident. King Viserys, who obviously Paddy Considine, the baby back bitch of a king, and Princess Rhaenyra sail to Driftmark to repair relations between the Targaryens and the Valerians by proposing marriage between Rhaenyra and Lord Corlys, Corlys' son, Laenor. Rhaenyra talks to Laenor, who she knows is gay, proposing an open marriage in which they perform their royal duties to produce heirs while remaining free to have lovers. Later, Sir Criston Cole suggests that Rhaenyra abandon the throne and elope with him to Essos. Rhaenyra refuses, but tells him their relationship can remain as it is. Criston leaves in anger, saying he's being used as her whore. Before leaving King's Landing, Sir Otto Hightower warns Alicent that if Rhaenyra becomes queen, Alicent's children will be in danger as a political threat to Rhaenyra. Larys Strong tells Alicent that an abortifacient tea was given to Rhaenyra. She summons Criston to question him about the allegations that Rhaenyra and Daemon had sex. Criston, misunderstanding, becomes distraught and confesses that he slept with the princess and he expects severe punishment, but Alicent merely dismisses him and keeps the information confidential. Getting spicy up in King's Landing. At a feast celebrating Rhaenyra and Laenor's forthcoming nuptials, Alicent interrupts the king's speech by entering the hall wearing a vivid green gown, House Hightower's signal color for a call to arms, a signal of war, if you will. Her uncle, Lord Hobart, assures her that she will receive full political support. Daemon unexpectedly attends the feast. Sir Gerald Royce accuses him of murdering Lady Rhea. Daemon denies the allegation and says that he expects to inherit his late wife's lands and title, and Daemon flirts with Laena, Corlys' daughter, and privately confronts Rhaenyra over her willingness to marry Laenor, and Rhaenyra goads Daemon to take her to Dragonstone to become his wife. What you gonna do about it, bitch? Sit me down. Come take me. I'm here for the taking. What are you gonna do about it? Basically knowing that Daemon has this inferiority complex that, if he's not in control, he's not going to perform. And Rhaenyra fully knows that, and she does the same thing in front of a bunch of people. And then meanwhile, Laenor's lover, Sir Joffrey Lonmouth, played by Solly MacLeod, realizes that Criston is Rhaenyra's paramour and approaches him, smugly suggesting they guard each other's secrets. Criston perceives Joffrey's comment as blackmail, and driven by guilt and anger, he brutally beats Joffrey to death. And beats is not the word. He murdered this motherfucker. I felt bad for Joffrey in this instance because, my goodness, Sir Criston just took out all of his anger, all of his guilt, all of his demons on this man's, and beat him to death, bringing the feast to a disastrous end. And to avert further scandal, Laenor and Rhaenyra are hastily wed in a private ceremony the same night after this just happened. Laenor is crying over his lover being dead in front of him. You see his arm move just a little bit before they cut to the next scene, and it's just gruesome and brutal. Very on brand for a Game of Thrones universe wedding. And this is where a frail and exhausted Viserys collapses immediately afterward, and later a despairing Kristen is about to commit suicide over his misdeeds, but Alicent interrupts him. Just a wild scene of events, just when we thought last week with House of the Dragon, it was kind of, getting a little slower in a sense, not really knowing exactly what was going to pop off. What a pop off of a mid-season episode we got here, because good grief, it was brutal, it was gruesome, there was spice, there was gore, there was just everything you could imagine in terms of what I'm sure the Game of Thrones universe provides. It was provided here in House of the Dragon episode 5. The critical response on this episode, Rotten Tomatoes, it got an 86% based off of 98 reviews and an average rating of 7.5 out of 10. The website's critical consensus said, holding true to the Westerosi rule that no wedding goes according to plan, We Light the Way is a disturbing midpoint for House of the Dragon, punctuated by shocking brutality and Queen Alicent coming into her own. That was one of the big takeaways I took from this episode. Alicent really comes into being the boss bitch that she is, and she's ready to take over. This is her kingdom just as much as it is King Viserys. And, the fact that when they showed into next week's episode that the Kings survived this 10-year time jump is wild to me, because he looked like he was dead on arrival at this wedding. He's throwing up on the ship to begin the episode, and just a brutal, wild episode of House of the Dragon. It really put a stamp on, this midpoint of the season that we're at. It put a stamp on the run for young Rhaenyra and young Alicent, and I think next week's episode is going to really hone in and lock in on where the rest of this buildup of this show is going to be. It really kept you on the edge of your seat the entire time. There was so much to really take in from this episode and really dissect for what it was. A lot of plot points and a lot of plot holes being filled as well. The coming together of two kingdoms again was pretty wild. We saw another dragon for the queen that never was. And Rhaenyra is just continuing to pop off and be the bad bitch that she is. She's not going to take anything lightly. She's going to attack things from the mindset of a Targaryen, and she's going to show you why she is the heir to the throne. She's not going to let anybody come in, in harm's way of preventing her from getting what she deserves. And, Daemon just continues to be a royal scumbag, yet here we are, still in my brain. For the most part, I'm still Team Daemon. Does it suck that, he popped out and murdered his estranged wife? Yes. Is it weird that, in the middle of a wedding floor, he's grabbing the throat of Rhaenyra in a sexual manner, but then again, can't finish? Hashtag Professor Calamitous in this bitch. And then, of course, flirting with, flirting with Laenor's sister is a wild move, to say the least. Flirting with a Valerian, trying to just do as much as he can to make his way to the throne. And I don't know how next week is going to go. It's going to be wild to see this 10-year time jump of how things are going to, essentially pop off moving forward. It was quite the episode. It was pretty highly critically acclaimed, and I thought it was a good way to really jump everybody back into the Game of Thrones universe and into the House of the Dragon hype. Not that I thought it died down per se, but I feel like a lot of people were like, all right, where are we going next? What's going to pop off now? And I think they did a really good job of bringing everybody back in and being like, hey, we ain't done yet. You thought we was finished? Hold up, wait a minute. Shout out Meek Mill. I thought they did a really solid job of portraying everything that is to come while still, being at the forefront of plot, development and storytelling, and, the inner conflicts of, Rhaenyra and her best friend. Rhaenyra and her father, Rhaenyra and Daemon, and, bringing more and more to the forefront of the Valerians as well in this episode, and, how they're going to be critical players on this chessboard. It's been a while since we've seen them. I think the last time we saw them was episode 4? Or no, because the last time we saw them was like episode 3, I think, at the very end of the crab feeder episode. So there was a lot to really take away from this one. Obviously, Dylan is not on this episode this week, but he will be back next week, and he is our Game of Thrones expert per se. But I really enjoyed this episode. I think this was, in the top tier pantheon of episodes so far of the first 5 of House of the Dragon for me, and that is why it's going to get a whopping score of an 8.7. It's my highest score so far for House of the Dragon. I think my highest previously was episode 3 with an 8.4. But I'm giving this an 8.7. It was daunting, brutal, action, conflict, just world building even more. I thought this episode was really, really well done, and it was directed by Claire Kilner, written by Charamaine de Gratte. Let's see what else Claire has done. She directed the films How to Deal and The Wedding Date. Very, very on brand there, directing a wedding episode here. Yes, okay, I remember who this is now that I'm looking at her credits and everything. But very well done episode, very enjoyable. Probably based on my score, it's my favorite episode of the season. And I'm excited to see where we go on Sunday now with this 10-year time jump, how that kind of, helps develop the plot and where we're going to go from here in House of the Dragon. But dem dragons are popping off, and I can't wait to see what else is in store in House of the Dragon. But without any further ado, shout out to dem dragons. Continue to submit your dragon scrolls. I know we didn't tweet out about them, but we definitely will be this Sunday and moving forward now that I'm no longer on the road this summer, coming to an end. Shout out to the PLL. And but we'll be tweeting, submit your dragon scrolls, which is our podcast listener submitted questions, theories, memes, funny points, things we may have missed throughout the episode. Send them in to us at StreamerSZN on Twitter or Instagram. You can DM me on Twitter at KBIZZL311. You can DM Dylan on Twitter at Dylan Mazzola, DYLANMAZZOLA. And you can also email us, undergroundsportsphi@gmail.com. Just use House of the Dragon as the subject line, and we'll read your dragon scrolls on the podcast. We really want to get the listeners involved here big time. And of course, you guys know we're on that hashtag Road to 1K Gauntlet Challenge for the YouTube channel, that if we get to 1K subscribers on YouTube, I'm going to be sitting down and watching Season 1 of Game of Thrones, the original Game of Thrones. So subscribe to the YouTube channel and get us to 1K, and you'll get me watching Game of Thrones. But without any further ado, done with the dragon chaos, we're heading to a galaxy far, far away, and Christian's going to tap back in, and we're going to break down episodes 1 and 2 of Andor. So sit tight, stick around. It's about to be crazy. And we're back. So from the MCU to a galaxy far, far away, we are going to be breaking down episodes 1 and 2 of Andor, a Star Wars story. This is obviously the prequel show to Rogue One, which I think is pretty much collectively viewed by everyone in the Star Wars community as the best Star Wars movie. That everybody in recent memory, of all the ones that have come after the originals, everyone agrees that Rogue One is, pretty much a flawless Star Wars film.
Okay, before we get too deep into this, I have a quick soapbox to hop onto.
The floor is yours.
So, before the show, you were talking about how you didn't feel like you were watching a Star Wars film. And that's kind of purposeful when you consider the person who's in charge of this show. So the person in charge of this show is the one, the only only Tony Gilroy, who, aside from being one of the screenwriters on Rogue One, is probably one of the best action/spy thriller writers of the century. Because before the 2000s, his most notable credit is being involved in writing the adaptation for the screen of Armageddon. And then he was involved in writing the trilogy of Bourne films, which have, in my opinion, just a lot of, which Andor has a lot of Bourne DNA in it. And he also wrote and directed Michael Clayton, which is a legal corporate espionage thriller, which some people consider to be one of the 100 best films of the century. And so you take this guy who's known for doing much more grittier types of stories, and you give him basically a espionage sci-fi show, and you go let him cook, and you can instantly tell in that first opening scene when he's going down the ocean walker, I forget the exact term they use it. Mm-hmm. That imagery is straight out of Blade Runner 2049. It is that. Just from the first shot, you go, this is a different type of thing. And I was insanely excited about this show just from watching just when the trailer came out, because I was this feels different. This feels different. And it absolutely showed that in the first 2 episodes. I was hooked immediately.
Yeah, it was one of those things where they're obviously not using the CGI that the most recent Star Wars shows have used. They're using actual sets, which I think has enhanced kind of the visual, perspective of this show. It gives, the landscape a lot more depth and a lot more of immersion from a viewer standpoint. But I thought this show did like you said, did a really good job of hooking the viewer right from the jump. And, there's a lot of, fun things. Yeah, there's a lot of world building. And, for anybody that hasn't seen Rogue One and you're just kind of starting off with Andor, I think that's also kind of a same here. We're in the same boat. I've never seen Rogue One. I just know bits and pieces of it, but I'm doing it purposefully so I can kind of build into it, because there's going to be 2 seasons of Andor, and then the finale of season 2 is what's going to lead into the events of Rogue One. So that's exciting from a standpoint of just, world building, filling in the gray areas that these Star Wars shows have tended to do in a lot of ways. So episode 1 is titled Casa, directed by Toby Haynes and written by the aforementioned Tony Gilroy. So 5 years before the Battle of Yavin, Cassian Andor travels to the industrial planet of Morlana 1 on the trail of his missing sister. And I thought one cool thing about this episode 2 that I know Rogue One did, they showed a lot of, here's where we are. This is, the planet we're at. This is the very first time in Star Wars history that they've used the term BBY on screen, which is kind of, for the traditional world, your BC AD type of thing. It's your, time frame type of thing. And this is taking place in 5 BBY. It's the very first time Star Wars canonically has put that on a screen, which I think is pretty neat for all the Easter egg nerds out there. While searching for her in a brothel, very funny that She-Hulk and House of the Dragon have weddings, and House of the Dragon and Andor now using brothels. There's connections here, baby. Cassian is antagonized by 2 Pre-Mor Authority security officers. An altercation between the trio shortly ensues outside the brothel, leading to Cassian accidentally killing one officer and executing the other. Not exactly sure what the difference is there. They both gone. Pour one out for him. Cassian flees to the planet Ferrix, where he attempts to hide his involvement by convincing his adopted mother, Marva's droid, B2 Emo. Yeah, we've all been 2 emo, 1 point or another. Rock on. I'm a big fan of this new droid as well. And his friend Brasso to cover for him. Cassian also asked his friend Bix to connect him with a black market buyer, as Cassian has acquired a Starpath unit, a valuable piece of Imperial navigation technology. Bix agrees and contacts the buyer, but her attempts to hide her connection with Cassian make her boyfriend Tim suspicious. Tim with 2 M's. And I don't know about you, Christian, but Tim spelled with 2 M's, that's kind of suspicious. Back on Morlano 1, the chief inspector of security elects to cover up the murders to improve his report to the Imperial authorities, but his deputy, the ambitious Cyril Karn, is determined to solve the case. Karn identifies Cassian's borrowed ship and traces it to Ferrix, and learns from an eyewitness from the brothel that Cassian stated he was from the planet Canary. And in a flashback, a younger Cassian known as Casa and his tribe on Canary decide to investigate a crashed ship, only to stumble upon an immense Republic mining operation. And that was episode 1 of Rogue One. Lot of happenings in this one. The flashbacks, I think, are something that Star Wars has started to adopt, especially with kind of these prequel-esque shows that are filling in those gray areas, like we mentioned. But I mean, it gives a lot of context to Cassian Andor's character with the flashbacks and where he's coming from to get to the point that he was in Rogue One. I thought this episode was very, captivating, and it brings you into the world in such a unique way that you almost feel immersed into, this galaxy far, far away, more so than we felt, in Obi-Wan Kenobi, in the Book of Boba Fett. It gives you that immersion factor that I think The Mandalorian has for everybody who's watched Mando along with us. But I really found this episode very intriguing, and I think the way that they rolled these episodes out was a very smart idea, and it kept you, on the edge of your seat, and it's like, all right, let's roll into the next one. It was very binge-worthy, if you will.
With the way the first episode was handled, it's very clear that they got a screenwriter who knew what they were doing in that type of genre, gave him the parameters and said, "Go cook." And it's just such a well done first episode.
Yeah, there are a lot of shows that you can fumble the bag with a premiere and you'll lose a lot of viewers. And I think this show did a fantastic job, keeping you captivated and keeping you ready to lock in for, the other episodes that they rolled out here on premiere day. Episode 1, though, I think from here we'll give our grading for episode 1. I thought this episode was really solid, and it really gives you a lot of context and gives you a lot of, thoughts and keeps your mind going for where this show is going to take you. So I'm going to give it a solid 8.4 out of 10.
I'm going to give it a 9 because it served its purpose perfectly, was insanely well crafted, and just made me want to instantly keep watching more. I can't call it perfect, but I think it's pretty close to as perfect as something like that could be.
Yeah, and I think another thing that I tend to talk about too that really keeps you pushing along with shows, I thought the music was fantastic so far throughout these few episodes that we've watched, and episode 1 certainly delivered on its score. And that brings us to episode 2, titled That Would Be Me.
Much shorter summary.
Also directed by Toby Haynes and written by Tony Gilroy. Tim, with 2 M's, still suspicious of Bix and Cassian, reports Cassian to Primor Security, who issue a warrant for his arrest. Karn partners with Mosk, an equally ambitious and aggressive Primor officer, to arrest Cassian. B2 Emo informs Cassian and Marva of the warrant, sending Marva into a panic. Cassian prepares to flee the planet. Meanwhile, Bix's buyer, Luthen Rael, travels to Ferrix to obtain the Starpath unit, And then in a flashback, Casa and his cohorts locate and investigate the crashed ship, but one of them is killed by a survivor. The tribe successfully kills the attacker and leaves the crash site. Casa stays behind to explore the ship. I thought this was a solid, follow-up episode. It, like you said with episode 1, it served its purpose to kind of build into, episode 3, which Christian and I have not sat down to dive into just yet. Some things to take away, though, I think, in these first couple of episodes. The guy that is, ringing the bell in the bell tower and everything, a lot of people I love his character, by the way, and a lot of people are speculating that giant, thing that he's banging on is made of Beskar, which for the people at home, that's what the Mandalorian suits are made out of. So a little potential, linking there, which is tinfoil hat, Beskar hats, if you will. That was a pretty cool Easter egg that I was able to pick up on. Also, in these first 2 episodes, when B2 Emo gets, peed on by that wild boar dog thing.
Taser.
Hilarious. And I think that's what's been pretty cool about this, too. While it is kind of that spy espionage side of Star Wars, there's still some, comedic side of things. There's also some, intense, romanticism, if you will, throughout it. And I think that's what makes for a good show. It gives you diversity in all facets of a genre that it can be. And episode 2 I thought was pretty solid, and it's going to be a solid lead into episode 3, which I've heard from a lot of people. Spoiler, no context, is a very, very fun and good episode. But episode 2, Christian, for Andor, I think it really, in my mind, made it make sense why they did a 3-episode premiere. It was, here's your big debut episode for your pilot, and then you go into that middle ground that fills in some of the pieces from episode 1, but also helps you lead into episode 3. And it's done some really solid world building so far as well.
It was I hesitate to even call it filler, but it was like a good version of what a filler episode could be, because it still keeps things moving forward on a linear path while not giving us all that much.
Yeah, I thought it was one of those things, like you said, it wasn't necessarily a filler episode, but it was, one of those middle ground type things that helps push the plot forward, helps you kind of figure out where this show is going to continue to progress. And I'm really liking this show so far. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel, especially going into it without having any real knowledge of Rogue One outside of, knowing that Cassian Andor is in it and knowing that Darth Vader is in Rogue One. But it is that, darker side of Star Wars that a lot of Star Wars fans clamor for and really want more of. And I'm hoping we continue to see that. And I think the flashbacks are fun. How do you feel about the flashbacks so far that they've shown and how they're utilizing them?
I feel like it's good. Obviously, it's all going to start to come to a head at some point. Because, at the end, we got the great shot of the sister standing alone in the camp. And I think sometime in the next few episodes, we're going to see that she's disappeared. if I had to place some money on something, but it's clearly setting up to come to a head to where the storylines will kind of merge, and there's going to be a revelation. I'm like, okay, good. It's the good thing is it's not overdoing it with the flashbacks. That's the key part.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's giving you just enough detail from these flashbacks to help progress the present-day storyline as well, where you're not getting too lost, jumping back in time and then coming back to where things are happening in present-day during Andor and everything. But like you said, I think it will eventually come to a head. We won't necessarily see, flashbacks, I think, throughout a 12-episode season and a 24-episode series. So I think at some point, those, like you said, those flashbacks will kind of merge into where things are currently happening and, why exactly they're using the flashbacks. And I think the cool part, too, about these flashbacks is if you watch with captions on,
It doesn't
which
give you anything.
it doesn't give you any context, which I find very fascinating because you kind of just have to use context clues and you sort of pick up on what's going on basically just by body language and, facial expressions and everything. And I really like that aspect.
Not babying the audience.
Yes.
Not babying the audience. More of it, please.
Big fan of how they utilize them. And it just lets you kind of draw your own conclusions of, how Cassian got to where he is now and where he comes from and why he's, on this urgent trek to find his sister. And we necessarily don't know exactly where his sister is, who took his sister potentially, and what exactly happened to her. But you know that there's some sort of trouble afoot with it. And in my opinion, without having seen Rogue One, there's probably something to do with the Empire dealing with his sister one way or another. And
Star Wars Empire?
What do you mean by that? But I think Andor has done a phenomenal job of bringing the Star Wars community back in after what I would say, two solid shows with the Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan Kenobi, but not, home runs per se, like The Mandalorian has been for the Star Wars universe. And I think Andor, for a lot of people, could end up being their favorite Star Wars Disney Plus show in a lot of ways, which is exciting. And I think that's something that Star Wars as a whole has kind of lacked outside of The Mandalorian. Like, so many people were brought in because it wasn't on that same, storyline of, all right, how are we going to lead into getting to, the Luke and Leia, typical Star Wars Force dark side storyline. It's different, it's a galaxy. That is the first thing you see in a Star Wars movie is a galaxy far, far away. A galaxy is massive. There are many happenings in a galaxy, and this is something Dylan harps home about all the time, too. Like, get us off Tatooine all the time. We don't need to be on that desert planet every single Star Wars show, and there's so many stories you can tell in the Star Wars universe, as seen in the Clone Wars animated series, where not everything was around, the Jedi and everything. You can tell stories about different characters without having to even involve, Jedi, dark side, lightsabers, or anything, and it'd still be a really fucking cool show.
Scale. This show's handling scale so well.
Yeah, I think this show is going to age really well, and it's going to, be something that a lot of people put in the pantheon of, like, all-time Star Wars content.
Yeah.
So for episode 2, Christian, what would your score grade be?
7.5. It's better than last She-Hulk episode, but worse than the premiere. So it's like B minus, C plus. It's like very, very good, but like it doesn't do much story wise.
Yeah, I think I'm in that same realm of a 7.5 for this episode. Like we mentioned, it progresses the plot without really giving you too much, and I think that takes a lot of skill in a lot of ways in a show like this to be able to progress the plot without giving the viewer a lot more context from what you already, emphasized in the first episode. And, next week we'll be breaking down episode 3 and 4, which I'm excited to dive into as well. And like I said, I think Andor as a whole is going to be in that pantheon of a Mandalorian. It's going to be in the pantheon of some of the original Star Wars movies where a lot of people look to this show as that connecting ground of how the hell did we get to Rogue One and piece it all together, and potentially, season 1 and 2 of Andor being, almost 12 episode long prequel movies to Rogue One is also kind of exciting. So I'm looking forward to more from this show, more so than I was going into it. I was excited for Andor going into the show, but knowing what we're going to kind of be getting from it now, it's taken my excitement level probably from like a 7.4 to like a 9.2. Like, this show's going to have you on the edge of your seat almost every single week.
Yeah, it's basically taken me from an 8 to a 9. And just two things I want to say before we wrap up this section, and I have to go. But right now, Michael Clayton, Tony Gilroy's superb film that he wrote and directed, and people consider like maybe one of the best 100 films of the century, is currently streaming on HBO Max. Check that out if you get the chance, because it's a really good legalish thriller. And then secondly, if you look at episode 4 through 6, his brother's writing those episodes, Dan Gilroy. And I know it's not on streaming, it used to be, but if you can watch Nightcrawler, that was Dan Gilroy's directorial debut, and he also and Dan Gilroy also wrote that. It's also an exceptional film with maybe the most unhinged and disgusting Jake Gyllenhaal you have ever seen, and it's such a great social critique film about the state of the news and all that.
I did hear. I don't know if I've ever seen Nightcrawler, but I've heard the title before.
The car he drives towards the end of that film.
Beautiful.
I love it.
We love it. We're going to dive into the streaming platform Multiverse news and notes. Christian's going to go to the movie theater because he's a movie savant. Make sure you guys are following him on Twitter at @thewiz_PHI. If you're a movie fan, if you're a TV fan, and if you're a Philly sports fan, you should be following Christian. So make sure you follow him there. And I'm sure this will not be the last time we get Christian on the show. So I appreciate you hopping on.
It's not.
And let's enjoy this ride of just golden age of streaming platform content that we're in for over the next few years now.
We shall. It's been good being on, Kyle.
And now it's time to get into everybody's favorite segment. It is the streaming platform Multiverse News and Notes, brought to you by our homies over at Pickup. You guys can go to playpickup.com, start playing the hottest headlines in sports. It's football season. Get the college football props you want to play, NFL, baseball postseason, and of course NBA and NHL right on the horizon. You got NASCAR, and hopefully one day we'll have pop culture stuff for movies and TV show predictions as well over on Pickup's website. All you got to do is go sign up with your phone number at playpickup.com, start playing the headlines, rack up points on your fan profiles, cash them in for prizes on the Pickup Marketplace. That's playpickup.com. First things first here in the news and notes segment. As you guys are watching this, the Netflix To Dumb event is happening, and we will be keeping you up to date on everything going on in the world of Netflix, shows, movies, and all that good stuff from the big To Dumb boys. So stay tuned for all of our To Dumb coverage. Probably not going to do a live stream like we did last year, but we did get some massive announcements last year during To Dumb. We got our second trailer of 4 of Stranger Things Season 4, which was exciting, and a whole lot more. So we will be covering To Dumb at length tomorrow, or today as you're watching this, I should say. But the latest news and notes around the streaming platform Multiverse. Michael B. Jordan has confirmed that Canelo Alvarez has been cast in Creed 3. That's a big-time casting right there. We've got new release dates for Sony Marvel films. Kraven the Hunter, starring Aaron Taylor Johnson, will come out October 6th, 2023, with Madam Web coming out now February 16th, 2024. We've got a Constantine sequel in development at Warner Brothers. Keanu Reeves and director Francis Lawrence will return. That's big-time news, faux show. And then, this is interesting. New Line Cinema let the rights to develop an Iron Man film go back to Marvel because they thought the character didn't make sense since Iron Man was too heavy to fly. Talk about fumbling the fucking bag. Squid Game creator Hwang Dong-hyuk says major Hollywood actors will likely be in Season 3 if it's greenlit. One actor he wants is Leonardo DiCaprio, who is a big fan. And for Squid Game Season 2, Hwang Dong-hyuk says the budget has been increased significantly, and just as I'm recording this, a brand new unreleased clip from Season 1 of Squid Game has been put out on the interwebs as some early to dumb content. Patty Considine says Viserys Targaryen is suffering from leprosy in House of the Dragon. Eugene Cordero will be returning and has been, his contract has been upped to a series regular for Loki Season 2. Looking here. We've got Steven Spielberg saying he has no plans for retirement anytime soon. That's very exciting. EA Motive confirms that they are working on an Iron Man game. It's a single-player, third-person action-adventure game. The first trailer for Sonic Prime, which will be releasing later this year on Netflix. That's just continuing to build into my Super Smash Bros. Universe, cinematic universe theory. Andor debuts with an 89% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 161 reviews. Let's see. Millie Alcock says about the 10-year time jump here. I'm so excited to see what Emma did with Rhaenyra. There's no way I could have played her in the later stages of her life because I don't have the same lived experience that Emma has. Marvel Studios confirms War Machine will get multiple all new suits in Armor Wars. House of the Dragon is averaging 29 million viewers per episode. And here's the big one. Jon Bernthal, the boy, is rumored to reprise his role as the Punisher in Daredevil Born Again. Due to scheduling conflicts, he will take the rumored spot that Jessica Jones was going to have. So the Punisher is back. Jon Bernthal, welcome to the MCU canonically, my man. I'm stoked. Let's go. Daredevil and the Punisher back again. Let's fucking ride. Along with Kingpin. Daredevil Born Again is going to be absolutely wild, and I can't wait for it. October 1st, we've got Miles Teller hosting SNL with musical guest Kendrick Lamar. And let's see what we've got here. Jeff Kaplan and Ian Springer will continue to be on board and write the Fantastic Four. They've been involved with the film since even before Matt Shakman was hired to direct it. So Shakman and Kevin Feige will now focus on finding the cast. Rhea Seehorn will star in Vince Gilligan's new Apple TV Plus series. It is blended, grounded genre drama. Say that 10 times fast. Olivia Cook on how she was told to play the role of Alison Hightower in House of the Dragon. She's like a woman for Trump. I tried to find a different route into her, but I could see what they were saying with this complete indoctrination and denial of her own autonomy and rights. Pretty wild shit there. Tim Burton's Wednesday releases on Netflix November 23rd. That will certainly be a show we talk about on this podcast one way or another, so stay tuned for coverage of Wednesday. I'm very excited for that one. What else do we have here? Olivia Cook is just dropping the all-time quotes here. Olivia Cook on Alison Hightower's children in House of the Dragon. Quote, "They're all fucking weird." John Cena sets a Guinness World Record for the most wishes granted through a Make-A-Wish Foundation, with 650 wishes granted for critically ill children. Shout out to the people's champ, John Cena. And here's the big one, the big news of the day. This dropped right as Christian and I started recording, actually, via Vanity Fair. James Earl Jones is stepping back from voicing Darth Vader. The end of an era. Apparently, he has signed off on using his archival voice recordings to keep Vader alive and vital even by artificial means. It's the end of an era. James Earl Jones is that voice. He is Darth Vader. I know he's obviously getting older in age. How old is James Earl Jones? Let's see. Yeah, I mean, he's 91. Legend. Absolute legend. Shaped an all-time villain in cinematic history in Darth Vader and turned him into this big bad motherfucker that you didn't want to ever run into. So the end of an era there. James Earl Jones, an absolute legend, and stepping away from the voice of Darth Vader. Dylan should be back next week. We obviously had, his Elvis arc of life here. He's been not feeling too well, but he will be back next week. Big thanks to Christian for hopping on the show. And if there's any news or notes you guys think we missed out on this week in the streaming platform Multiverse News and Notes, send them our way. DM us on Twitter and Instagram at StreamerSZN. Make sure you guys are following us at StreamerSZN as well. Twitter and Instagram. Follow me on Twitter at KBIZZL311. Follow Christian on Twitter at TheWiz_PHI. Follow Dylan on Twitter at Dylan Mazzola. Check out our website, undergroundsportsphiladelphia.com, for all of our written content. Subscribe to the podcast feed, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, and leave those 5-star ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts with your TV and show recommendations for us to watch as the weeks go by. We want to add them to our list of things to watch as, we are in this busy season right now, but that will eventually die down, and we'll need things to watch, and we want to hear from you and get you guys involved. Send us your Dragon Scrolls for House of the Dragon, and, of course, subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel, where you get full video episodes of your favorite Underground Sports Philadelphia podcasts, and you get to interact with us. Comment down below your thoughts on She-Hulk, House of the Dragon, Andor, and anything else that may come to mind. Smash that like button, ring the bell icon, and of course, subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel. Shout out to all of our sponsors, Tomahawk Shades, Pickup, Kenwood Beer, and Bino Board. All of their info is linked in the show notes on audio and in the description on YouTube. But this has been another episode of StreamerSZN, the exclusive TV and movie podcast for streaming platforms on the Underground Sports Philadelphia Podcast Network. For Christian, I'm KB, and until next week, we're going to go Hulk out on a dragon in a galaxy far, far away. Peace.